Was Isaac Dulgarian robbed in his fight in the UFC against Christian Rodrigues this weekend? This has been a massive talking point all over Twitter, social media. People are up in arms about the decision. Christian Rodrigues defeated Isaac Dulgarian via split decision. So if you don't know me, I bet on MMA for a living. So I often have to deal with bad decisions, good decisions, and whatever the judges say heavily impact the amount of money I win week to week. So I'm going to touch on two aspects of the fight, right? First, we're going to speak about the scoring of the fight, what I think the fight should be scored, and if I think it was a robbery after all. And the second thing we're going to speak about is the betting aspect of this fight. Was Dulgarian a good bet? Was Christian Rodrigues a good bet? And what should they actually be lined by the bookmakers? Two things are completely separate. We need to make that clear first of all. On the weekend, right after the fight, I posted that I bet on Christian Rodrigues, but I scored the fight for Isaac Dulgarian. I also said that I believed that Christian Rodrigues was the correct bet in the fight. Everyone went completely insane at me, told me I didn't know what I was talking about and that it was a robbery, even though I said that Dulgarian won the fight. And what that comes down to is people can't separate two things. So we're gamblers, right? We have to separate the scorecards and the results from the betting aspect of the fight. There's two completely different things. And it's very important to understand that if you want to make money betting on MMA. So first, let's speak about the scoring. We don't need to speak about round 1 or round 3. They're very easy to score, and every single judge across the board scored those rounds correctly. It was a 10-8 for Isaac Dulgarian in the first round on all 3 judges' scorecards. They all got it right, no one's complaining about that. And it was also a 10-8 for Christian Rodrigues in the third round on all 3 judges' scorecards. They got it right again, no one's complaining about that. So everyone's saying the scorecards are crazy, but actually it only comes down to one round where the judges disagreed. Every other round, on every other scorecard, the judges scored it exactly the same, and that round was round 2. Now I've just got done re-watching round 2. Now when I first saw it, I scored it for Isaac Dulgarian, but I scored it for him fairly narrowly. It definitely wasn't a blowout round as I was watching it live, but I definitely scored it for Isaac Dulgarian, and I thought the judges would score it for him. Now one judge scored it for him, but 2 judges scored the round for Christian Rodrigues. So I've gone back today and I've rewatched the round, and actually my opinion has changed slightly on that round. I think the round was fairly 50-50. It could have gone either way. It was an extremely close round. Now Dulgarian had tons of control, but he done nothing with the control. He had the body lock for the most part. Every time he tried to take the back, Christian Rodrigues spun him off, stood up back to his feet, and most of the fight played out in the clinch, with Isaac Dulgarian holding on to a body lock and doing absolutely no damage. And when I say no damage, I mean 0 strikes thrown for about 3 minutes of the round. Whereas Christian Rodrigues, although he was getting held up against the cage and sometimes held on a mat where his knees were up or one knee was on the mat, he was trying to do damage. There was a period about 4 or 5 seconds where Christian Rodrigues landed some good elbows up against the cage to Isaac Dulgarian's side of his head when Dulgarian was handling him up against the cage. And a couple of other times throughout the round, he landed short strikes that didn't really do any damage, but it was a lot more damage than Isaac Dulgarian was doing. But we can say that was offset by Dulgarian's control with the body lock. Now these type of rounds are always going to be tough to score, and there's always going to be debate on both sides because it really depends on what you factor more. If Dulgarian was holding him by a body lock and doing 0 damage, not even 0 damage, but 0 strikes, is that more impactful than Christian Rodrigues getting controlled but also landing elbows and short punches? In my opinion, yes, but not by much. Like, I don't see how you can watch the first 3 minutes of that round and say it was 100% a Dulgarian round. I'd say 60-40 Dulgarian, 65-35, something like that. Because he literally did no strikes. He didn't land a strike. Not land an impactful strike, but he didn't land a strike. But we'll say Dulgarian has the round by about 65-35 at this point. But the last 2 minutes of the round, the momentum shifts a little bit. Rodrigues is able to break the body lock and they get to space. Dulgarian lands a nice leg kick, and this was basically his only strike of note in the entire round. The leg kick spun Rodrigues round. Rodrigues was a little bit heavy on his lead leg, so when he got kicked, he spun round a little bit. They got into another grappling scenario. And Rodrigues himself landed some good strikes at this point. He landed some good jabs. He landed a very nice uppercut which seemed to affect Dulgarian ever so slightly. And another strike that he landed was up against the clinch, like I said, when Dulgarian had the body lock, and he landed a very nice knee, by far the most effective strike of the entire round. It made a very loud sound, which I do think influenced the judges. As I said, it was the most effective strike of the round. Outside of that, Dulgarian threw a couple of strikes as he was closing range that didn't hit Christian Rodrigues. Then it went into the clinch at the end and Christian Rodrigues was trying to land some shots from top. Dulgarian again was just holding on. And that was basically the round, you know. After watching the round for a second time, right, after re-watching it, the round is as close to a 50-50 round as I think you can get. I couldn't score it. When I watched it live, I gave it to Dulgarian about 60-40 or 55-45, something like that. But when I re-watched it, I can't score it. It's 50-50 to me. I can't say that Christian Rodrigues won the round. I can't say that Isaac Dulgarian won the round. Dulgarian had a body lock and a couple of takedowns for 3 to 4 minutes. Dulgarian had a couple of takedowns, one leg kick, and he was holding on to the body lock for about 4 minutes of the round. Christian Rodrigues had a nice uppercut, a very nice knee, and a good amount of elbows and short-range punches while he was getting clinched up against the fence. So yeah, it's a tough round to score for me, man. I don't have a big opinion on who won the round, and I think that's anything past 60-40 is insanity. I personally say 50-50, but I think there's room for discussion there. I don't think anyone can say one fighter run away with that round. So after watching the fight in full, and like I said, as we know what happened in the third round. Dulgarian got beat up, just like C-Rod in the first round. So after watching the fight, I'm actually very shocked at the outrage post-fight. Because if you look online, if you look on social media, if you look at a lot of the commentary after that fight, you would think that it's one of the worst robberies of all time. Actually, a lot of people posted to me personally, even though I said I scored it for Dulgarian, they commented that it was one of the worst robberies of all time. And I understand there's money in the mix, there's emotions right after the fight, but it's actually kind of crazy how much outrage there was on a fight that came down to round 2, which was close to 50-50. Like I said, if you want to score it for Dulgarian, that's fine. But I don't think anyone in their right mind can actually say it wasn't a close round. If so, it just means they haven't rewatched the fight or they have very heavy bias in that fight. I hold my hands up here. I bet on Christian Rodrigues, so maybe I'm still being biased. Post-fight, I said Dulgarian won the fight. Rewatching it 24 hours after the fight has taken place, I'm saying that it's basically a 50-50 fight that comes down to round 2, and I could probably be persuaded either way. You're obviously going to get people seeing that I bet Christian Rodrigues a plus 160, saying that he's only saying this because he bet on Christian Rodrigues, and there's nothing I can do about that. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. To me, the round was fairly 50-50. Now let's speak about the betting aspect of the fight, right? The scorecards are one thing, but the betting aspect is another thing. And something I said on Twitter after the fight was that Isaac Dulgarian being a minus 200 favorite pre-fight with the unknowns are insane, and I stand by that very heavily. I believe that Dulgarian being bet out to minus 200 is insanity, not based on if he could look minus 200 or if he did look minus 200 in the actual fight, but based on the question marks that we had on his cardio going in that actually showed their face in the fight, and he almost got finished in round 3 because of that cardio, which no one knew if he had or not. So there's a big distinction that bettors need to make, right? Because you can say, oh, Dulgarian looked minus 200 or minus 150 because of the dominance in round 1, which I actually disagree with, but there's a basis and there's an argument that I could understand, even if I disagree with it, based on that. But that's post-fight. There's a big distinction between pre-fight and post-fight. And this is very important if you bet on sports to understand this, right? Something post-fight can be true, but pre-fight, it wasn't true. And I'm gonna give Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou as an example of what I mean, right? I still, to this day, believe that Cyril Gane against Francis Ngannou in a pick'em fight at minus 110 was the correct side to be on. I believe that Cyril Gane at minus 110 was unarguably the side to be on pre-fight. But post-fight, Ngannou looked minus 250. So I'm saying that in a rerun, Ngannou's probably minus 250, but Cyril Gane at minus 110 pre-fight was the correct side. Because pre-fight and post-fight are two completely different things. Post-fight, we now know that Ngannou can shoot takedowns for free in round 3, round 4, and round 5 and dominate those rounds with takedowns. Pre-fight, we never knew that. We had no idea he could even shoot takedowns, let alone shoot them for 5 rounds in the championship rounds. But what we did know was the striking of both fighters. And Cyril Gane made Francis Ngannou look like an amateur in the first 2 rounds and cleanly outstruck him. So post-fight, I would most certainly make Cyril Gane a favourite up to about -250 because of the wrestling upside. But pre-fight, we never knew that. And we had no data to suggest that. So even if you guessed it and you was correct, there was no data to suggest it apart from a 30-second sequence against Stipe in the second match that wasn't enough to justify Francis Ngannou having the wrestling upside over Cyril Gane. If anything, we thought that Cyril Gane may have some wrestling upside over Francis Ngannou. So I'll go back to this fight now. Pre-fight, there was no way you could line Isaac Dulgarian -200 because we didn't know how his cardio would hold up. We didn't know how he would hold up under resistance. And even in the fight, he didn't hold up well under resistance in that 3rd round and he almost got finished. And if he didn't grab the glove in round 3 when C-Rod was trying to go for the rear naked choke, who knows what happens? Also, who knows what happens in another iteration where C-Rod is able to get his game going a little bit earlier in round 2. Then he cleanly wins round 2. Or what happens in another iteration where Isaac Dulgarian finishes in round 1, right? So I think it's very tough to say what the line should be post-fight. But I think pre-fight, it's extremely easy to line the fight about a pick'em. If you want to give Dulgarian -125, I'm not massively going to argue with you. But pre-fight, the fight is close to a 50-50. Post-fight is a whole nother discussion. But again, I would line Dulgarian probably about a -125 because C-Rod's always going to win the 3rd round. There's many times he finishes the 3rd round. He basically is always going to get a 10-8 in the 3rd round. And round 2 was a 50-50 round that on another iteration, who knows how it goes? Maybe he breaks the body lock slightly earlier and cleanly wins the round. So in my eyes, the fight played out as a -110. As I said, 10-8 round 1, 10-8 round 3, and a 50-50 round 2, which equals -110 apiece. So I think post-fight, the fight is -110, around there anyway. But I think pre-fight, definitely, there's almost no argument that Isaac Dulgarian, there's no argument. Isaac Dulgarian never should have been a massive favourite at all. Slight favourite maximum based on what we knew. He had never been out of round 1. C-Rod had been out of round 1 many times in grueling fights like that, kept pushing until round 3, even at 145 against Jonathan Pearce. He put up a valiant effort against Jonathan Pearce, and that's the reason I bet him in this fight as an underdog. So I think overall, it's a very easy fight to break down, very easy fight to reline, and very easy fight to understand that no fight should have been a big underdog pre-fight, or no fighter should have been a big underdog pre-fight, but it just so happened that Christian Rodrigues was a big underdog. So that's my thoughts on the fight, guys. It's very important to take one step back and look at things objectively in order to get better at sports betting. I've done my best to look at things objectively post-fight. I've waited 24 hours to rewatch the fight. The emotions have cooled down, everything's come down now. But I'm actually more of the opinion than I was yesterday that the line that the bookies opened the fight up at, around -110, was correct all along. And on the robbery piece, I don't think it's a robbery. I think it's a very close 2nd round, and either fighter getting it is fine with me. So that's it, boys. I'll be back with another video tomorrow, and I'm going to put out a free bet for next week's card in a couple of days on my short. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. All of that malarkey, and I'll see you in the next video.